Welcome all to the Planning Commission meeting. So this is a continuation of the previous PROC hearing on PLN 22066 PROC Investments LLC. We're going to hear from the applicant.
You want to do the minutes first? Or?
Yeah, I will. I'll get to that. I just make some statements here. I want to make some.
I thought you were getting into it.
No, not getting
Sorry.
started yet. We'll go through a process on that. I just want to make sure everybody who is here understands that that's what we're here to hear tonight. There is no other public hearing or public comment on other issues that are not on the agenda. So I know people signed up and I don't know if they anticipated being able to speak for certain other things, but the only public input will come from the PROC continuation. So before we do that, we have a couple of things we need to do as far as our.
I'm sorry, I
business.
thought we could speak anything on the agenda.
No, it's the only thing on the agenda is that it's public hearing is the PROC. The other what's else is on the agenda is not for public comment. So minutes.
On PROC subdivision?
No.
So we're going to move into our minutes. If we have a motion to approve the minutes from the February 22nd.
I motion to approve those minutes, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you, Cindy.
I guess not to do that.
We need a second. I'm sorry, did I hear it?
And you go first, we have her second.
I'll second.
Thank you, thank you. Any comments, any questions about the minutes? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We'll start with Kate on the PROC hearing. Kate,
So we have PLN 22-066, which is the PROC limited use permit. Again, this is continued from the February 22nd, 2023 meeting. This is a limited use permit for a multi-purpose venue, including events, rentable rooms, and 10 RV spaces located southeast of Testman Road in Delta. Background, the PC met on this on 2/22/23. It was continued to address fire mitigation, irrigation ditches, stormwater permit requirements. Excuse me.
Hey, can you hold on?
so
just a
if you're here for, if you're not here for, if you want to speak for the PROC, PLN 22066, we would want you to sign up if you're here.
I'm just curious, who's the attorney here, please?
We're not really having a conversation
I know,
here.
but I thought if
Cindy,
it
we're
was
not
on,
gonna have
I
the
thought if it was
conversation.
on the agenda that we could speak.
It isn't.
Are you talking about bylaws tonight?
No.
Absolutely not.
Well, it's on the agenda, but it isn't for a public hearing. We're not
But we
having a
should be
public
allowed to
hearing.
speak because you represent us.
It's not a public hearing tonight on the bylaws.
So when are you gonna be talking about the bylaws?
When we schedule that.
When will that be?
When we get to that tonight, when we get to that on the agenda, we'll
I,
figure
and
that
I
out.
want everybody to hear who's on the board. You need to hear from your constituents because you represent the people.
Cindy, we're not making any
Okay.
changes to. Thank you.
Okay, so again, if you're
Thank you.
expecting to speak for anything other than the PROC, that won't be tonight. We're gonna allow Kate to continue. So we have a sign-up sheet. If anybody here who would like to speak regarding the PROC, please use the sign-up sheet. If you don't, we'll move on. Thank you. Go ahead, Kate.
Okay. Again, this application was continued to address issues for fire mitigation, the irrigation ditches, stormwater permit requirements, lighting, access and traffic safety, the liquor license, and hours of operation. Staff met with the applicants on 2/24/23 to discuss the PC follow-up and then issues to address. And then staff also met with the Delta County Sheriff, Emergency Management, and County Engineering on March 3rd for fire mitigation, access, and public safety. Staff received confirmation from Tri-County in regards to the requirements for a hydrant. Their hydrants require a 6-inch minimum, 6-inch line minimum to serve a fire hydrant. The nearest water line that can support a hydrant is approximately 0.8 miles away, and they have estimated the cost to upgrade this line to be $250,000. Delta County Emergency Management suggested to staff that we check if there are any state regulations for event venues, especially since we do not have fire codes adopted in the unincorporated areas of the county. Staff did reach out to the Division of Fire Prevention and Control. They requested a copy of the proposal so that they could review it to better inform the county on any state regulations that may be applicable in this case. Staff has not received communications back from them as of yet. We also talked about the pond that is located on the property being able to be used for fire mitigation, as well as the potential to use a cistern. Next slide. This is just a reminder of the fire hydrant locations. The aerial was provided to you guys last time in the meeting. The image in the bottom right corner was provided by Tri-County, so it just confirms the locations of the fire hydrants. These images are of the UVWA irrigation ditches on the property and in proximity to the property. The image on the left is the ditch that is along the east property line between the Proc property and the Snafflebit subdivision. The picture on the right is the ditch along the northern property line of the neighbor to the north of Proc, which is the flag lot. The picture in the middle shows both ditches in relation to the entrance to the venue. The applicant stated that they met with UVWA, however, staff has not received a copy of said communications. I did speak with them before the meeting. They have tried to email it to me a couple of times, but I have not received it, so I'm not really sure what's going on there, but they do have those communications from UVWA. This is just an example of lighting that they submitted to us. So in the top left corner, that's what it would look like. And then they supplied some of these images as to what the lighting would look like on the property at night with what they are proposing. Access was discussed with the county engineer. He is here tonight as well to answer any questions in relation to the access specifically. The county road standards for commercial use, which is also listed as a local road, is 2 7.5 foot wide lanes with 2 foot shoulders, which is a total of 19 feet wide. The existing access meets the rural driveway standards, which is 20 feet wide. So it meets the 19 foot wide minimum for the commercial use road standards. And neither of these standards require paving. A secondary and emergency access easement has not been obtained at this point. So these are some of the images that staff took when we were out on a site visit. The top left is the entrance from Tessman traveling west from 1600 Road. And then that bottom right is the entrance from Tessman traveling south from D Road. So that's that 90-degree right-hand turn. And then this is a close-up of the entrance to the property. The gate that you see here is for the neighbor, which is the flag lot to the west. Staff met with the county sheriff. He expressed concern for the traffic on both Tessman and 1600 roads. He stated that not a lot of accidents have happened on Tessman, but the 90-degree right-hand turn has caused problems in the past. 1600 Road is more of a concern as they have issues with high speeds. The line of sight at the intersection of Tessman and 1600 Road is also a concern as there is a large cottonwood stump that hinders the views of traveling public. Staff did propose a T intersection with a 3-way stop as a possibility to help mitigate traffic issues. So these are some of the images. The top left is the 1600 Road intersection. So this is the DMEA electrical and then the culvert and head gate that is sitting there. And then the bottom right is, I've pointed out where that tree stump is. So people have to pull up a little bit further to see past it for a line of sight onto 1600 Road. I did include this again. This was just the circulation from the traffic study. That traffic after leaving the site would either go north up to D Road or they would go east out to 1600 Road. And then I included the project trip generation and timing from the traffic study as well again. So in regards to stormwater, staff did reach out to CDPHE for confirmation on whether or not the stormwater permit would be needed, but we have not received communications as of yet. The applicants did supply documents from the state in regards to the type of liquor license they would need, which is a lodging and entertainment liquor license. And then the applicants have agreed to amend the hours of operations to end all music and alcohol at midnight, which would allow them time to clean up and close the venue by 1:30 a.m. So with that, staff is asking your commission to consider PLN 22-066 PROC, a limited use permit application in accordance with the LUC, as well as conditions, and ask your commission to make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. And that concludes my presentation. The applicants are here. Again, the county engineer is here, and I'm not sure if the traffic engineer who did the traffic study is here. He is here. Okay, so he's in the back corner there. That's Skip Hudson. So he can answer specific questions in regards to the traffic study.
Thanks, Katie.
Mhm.
So before Zach, I'd like to make sure the planning commission, if you have any questions regarding Kate's presentation, this would be a good time to ask.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure, Victoria?
I have an inquiry.
Sure.
I would like to know what law or statute allows us to act as a legislative body while violating our bylaws.
You're not acting in this capacity. You're not acting as a legislative body. You're acting as a quasi judicial body, first of all. And we will be getting to that part of the discussion
Okay,
later.
amend my inquiry. What laws or otherwise statute allows us to act as a quasi judicial body without following our bylaws?
Who said we're not following our bylaws?
We're not following our bylaws in multiple ways right now.
We had a decision about that. Be happy to talk about that later. We have that on the agenda.
So that would be something.
But your assessment of violating the bylaws is not necessarily shared by all of us.
So can we focus on the PROC?
No, I have another inquiry. What governs this body?
State statute.
State statute. And what part of state statute allows us to defy and violate our bylaws?
We said we're doing it. That's your opinion?
No, we can read
Do
our
you have a legal
bylaws.
opinion?
I've forwarded out an email to everyone here with references to laws
When
and
did you
specific
do that?
references to our bylaws
When
just
did you
now,
do that?
just before the meeting. This kind of
I
procedure,
haven't seen it.
10 minutes ago.
so 10 minutes ago. This kind of procedure doesn't require me to give
This
you
is
proper
terribly
notice.
disruptive.
Oh,
I mean,
I'm gonna call for a timeout here. The county attorney has weighed in. We do have the bylaws on the agenda. You have an applicant that is here. You have neighbors that are here. You have an agenda that is outlining the PROC. So at that time, when the bylaws are part of the discussion, then the planning commission can entertain those questions. And the county attorney has also weighed in, so we will be forwarding that to you as well at that time. But again, I would like you to concentrate on the applicant because they are in the audience as well as other members of the community at this time.
I
Thank you.
understand that.
Thank you.
I do believe it's in the best interest of the community to hear that we are governed by Robert's Rules of Order. And in Robert's Rules of Order, when we are in violation of our bylaws, every decision we have is rendered null and void. Again, I have referenced all of this in the email I sent out. So before we can continue, this is a secondary incidental motion on the matter at hand. Anything we come to tonight may be rendered null and void because of the violations in our bylaws as they stand right now,
Okay,
as we are as a commission.
so that'll be certainly something that somebody can determine at a later date if it may be rendered. So from that point on, I want to go back to PROC, because if you're right, then someone may be able to do that. For now, we're going to deal with the PROC. And if there's a controversy or somebody wants to contest what we do, that's something that can happen at a later date. So do you have any
Chairman?
questions regarding the PROC presentation from staff?
Yes, I do. I do have a question.
Sure.
Your duties as chairman, as stated in our bylaws, is to uphold the laws and make sure that all steps taken by this commission are done dutifully. It also states that no matter takes precedence over an inquiry of information. So my inquiry is what law allows us to violate our bylaws and still act in a legislative capacity. And we are creating laws and voting on them. Is that not a legislative capacity? We are not a form of governmental branch right now.
No, we don't create laws.
You know, I would rather hear whatever the county attorney's opinion is on this, rather than to listen to Victoria, who I don't believe has a law degree and is just
You have some
spouting
sort
off
of legal
stuff.
filing.
So I'd like to go on with this. This is
Yeah,
just
so
crazy.
Robert's Rules of Order 33, Section 3 of Parliamentary Inquiry. To obtain information, the chair's duty is to answer such questions as it may assist in the appropriate motion, may assist in the rise of a proper point of order, and might help the commission to understand the parliamentary situation at hand. This is, as I stated, it's a secondary implementary motion, which takes precedence over all other motions that they are connected with. It yields to, I have this all in the email. All can be applied in reference to any motion parliamentary situation out of which they arise. All are in order. And if they require immediate attention, which they do require immediate attention. Okay, Constitution of Colorado states that the ethics in government is that we must hold the respect and the confidence of the people and shall carry out all of our duties for the benefit of the people. They shall therefore avoid anything that is in violation of the public trust or even creates a justifiable impression among the members of the public that trust is being violated. By Robert's Rules of Order, when we are not following our bylaws, which I will now state because I guess the email didn't.
I thought it was.
Mr. Chairman, can I do a motion? We have put out this applicant more than once. And not because he hasn't come to the table with what needs to happen. He's come back several times. The last 2 weeks, my understanding is he's done a lot of due diligence to be able to have necessary information to us about lighting and hours of operation, et cetera. I truly believe, and I will agree with Steve, that this would be an attorney response if that's what she's asking for. I think we owe this man some respect and his time to show up yet again to present what he has found.
And the neighbors who have come.
So
And the neighbors,
I
yes.
second.
I
Jim's
will
motion.
respect
to
you
address,
all that
Victoria, to
have
address your
to-
concerns, they all may be legitimate, but you sent this to us 5 minutes ago, so you
Yeah,
really
And
haven't
this
given
does not
anybody,
require
you haven't given
previous
anybody the
notice.
chance to even review it.
Okay, point of order then. Point of order that we are breaking our bylaws right now.
Okay,
Right.
and it may, everything we meet that here may be in violation of that, and we're gonna still move forward. If someone so determines that our, whatever we do tonight can be rescinded, that'll happen at a later date, so I wanna move forward. Scott, do you have any questions for
The
staff?
problem is we cannot move forward because we are governed
We
by
collectively as a group
parliamentary.
can decide what we want to
You
do.
We
can't
would need an
vote.
attorney to weigh in on what you're.
Or we can just
talking
read the
about, because
laws.
you're claiming we're in violation, but.
Okay,
letting
we're in
you do
violation.
some
Know
sort
the
of
law.
proof.
Okay, so we are constituted by the Colorado State Constitution
I mean, I would weigh in, wait for
ensure
the county attorney. I think Cindy said
and
it best.
preserve public
We've got to move this
confidence. We
forward.
must have the
We've got
benefit
to
of
hear the
specific
applicant.
standards that guide our conduct.
I don't know.
And a penalty mechanism to enforce those standards. Our specific standards that we abide by are Robert's Rules of Order. The penalty mechanism for when we don't abide by them is that everything we do is rendered null and void.
Why didn't you send this earlier? I mean, give us a chance. Not everybody is swift as you.
You know, not everyone has time, including myself. I live a very busy life, time to fit in
So what are
research
you
about this kind
recommending
of
right
stuff.
now? What are you proposing that happen?
I recommend that we follow Robert's Rules of Order and we discuss the violations that are in place right now, as is our dutiful job.
I'm not saying-
on this
I'm
commission.
not saying I'm with you or against you. I'm just saying, we brought these people in here, had been, last 2 weeks would have been great to
And like I
give,
said, all of
a
us,
little bit of a
don't
heads
have-
up.
I
just to
agree.
Not waste everybody's time. I
I
mean, he's
agree.
trying to do a job too. I'm not saying you're right or wrong, and
I
I don't want to recoup
apologize
stuff
for the
either.
inconvenience to the
It's
members
just-
that showed up
you're
to this
throwing-
meeting. But as it
Throwing
stands,
fuel on a
this is in the
fire,
best
you know?
of his interest, because anything that we decide tonight,
Well, I'm sure he would have
May
loved
not
for you to tell
uphold.
him other than right
And
now.
I disagree with you that what you're saying is correct, so I think we should move forward.
you can disagree all you want,
That's-
but I
that's
can
fine.
state
We
laws.
disagree. Chairman, I
Let's
make a
agree to
motion.
disagree. Let's agree to disagree, and we're gonna move forward.
We bring this to a
Well, that's how
close
we're
If you
gonna work it.
dismiss,
and move this conversation forward. And if there is such a thing as closure under Robert's
Virginia,
rules.
So
of
there's a
order,
motion,
Virginia.
following Robert's Rules of Order, there is a motion on the table. Sydney made a motion to proceed with PROC. Was there a second to that
I
motion?
seconded that.
here's the thing, no motion takes precedence over a parliamentary inquiry, and it must
So
be
what is your-
settled.
You are,
So
you
what
are
is your
not a
mind?
parliamentarian, you're not an
In
attorney.
Robert's
We're
Rules
gonna
of
move
Order,
forward.
every single one of us, as
Let's
members
take a
of the
vote.
commission, has a right
Let's take
to
a vote.
debate, to bring forth a motion. This is a secondary
We're not
incidental motion,
talking-
which means that you cannot override it, you do not have to second it, and it must be dealt with before.
This is
you
not
can
an
do it.
order.
Can you-
We recognize your.
But
plans.
the question is, what allows
Hold on.
us?
We have a
Thank you.
motion and a second. We have a motion and a second,
Okay,
and we've noted your issue, and we still have a motion and a second. Is there any
okay,
further
parliamentary
discussion?
inquiry and request for
Victoria.
information do not
Victoria,
require
you're
a
being
second.
unruly and not allowing this to move
They
forward.
are
We have a
not
motion and a
debatable.
second.
They are not debatable, and though they may be accompanied by a brief explanation, no vote is taken for me to get an answer, and we do have a lawyer present. I have read Robert's Rules of Order. If you want to supply me with something from Robert's Rules of Order that goes against what I'm saying, please do so. That's your duty as the chairman, is to inform me, as I've asked you a question, of what the laws are.
Answer her inquiry.
We have a
by saying we're
motion
going to
and a
wait on
second.
hearing from
Can we have a
the
vote?
attorney.
Yeah,
Or is
well,
it
we
they
did say
agree?
that. I
Yeah.
mean, we did have an answer from the attorney, but we have it on the agenda after the hearing for the PROC, and we want to discuss it then, but she's not, doesn't seem to
Well, the reason
feel
this
like
is
that's-
relevant is because it directly affects our decision making.
So maybe we gotta do this before, just, I don't know.
But we have
Yeah, I understand.
Neighbors,
I'm
we have
with you.
You know how
applicant
it is to
here.
apply for.
This is obviously land use code. This is,
This is law.
this is
the
a
fact
key
that we
land
are
use
breaking the
code.
law.
People are mad.
And-
You're
No.
obviously with
What?
them.
No,
But
Steve.
what
need to move
what
on.
point
We're
is
hearing.
that- Are we not abiding by our bylaws, you know?
So there are a couple different ways we're not abiding. Okay, so firstly,
Okay.
when we selected Tom Kay as chairman, that was a violation. of the laws.
We're gonna take a 10-minute break.
Thank you,
Thank you. We're gonna take a 10-minute break.
thank you.
PROC, stay where you are. We're just gonna take a 10-minute break. Victoria, your complaint is noted. And I just want to ask, what is specifically your complaint about? My role,
My inquiry, my question
yes?
that I'm making a motion, a secondary incidental motion, which means that it's relevant to be answered
What's your
before we
motion?
can. What laws allow us to act in violation of our bylaws?
I understand.
Because
That's
there
not
are
a motion, that's a
state
question.
statutes that tell us we are not allowed to break our bylaws.
Okay.
Robert's Rules of Order continuously states that our bylaws are our supreme governing body. If our bylaws go over Robert's Rules of Order, we follow our bylaws.
And what
Point of
is,
clarification,
what
Mr.
is the
Chair,
bylaws?
I haven't heard anything of what specifically is being violated in the
What's
bylaws.
violated?
So there are two things. Your term as chair has expired and therefore, and again, I wasn't educated the first meeting that I had here and I was told that we could make an amendment and it's a friendly amendment to vote you in. That's incorrect. So it was a violation of our bylaws. Secondly, the only people that are allowed to serve on this board are members who reside in unincorporated Delta County. So the people that don't reside outside of city limits are breaking our bylaws.
Okay, so can we separate those two out? Because
Yes.
the incorporated versus unincorporated, to me, is a legal opinion. I'm not sure your legal opinion will suffice to answer that right now. Your objection to the way we elected a chairman can be resolved right now if I will step down as chair. Is that fair? Is that fair? Will that address your problem?
If you
If
step
I
down
step
as
down right
chair,
now?
that section of the inquiry and that section of our illegality is solved.
Okay, so if I do that, can we proceed with the PROC hearing?
Like I
I don't know
said,
about
to me, this is unethical and immoral for me with the information that I have to sit as we act outside of our capacity.
So if I
We are
step down,
bound
what's,
by the bylaws. that
what are we
includes-
objecting in the bylaws?
Besides your chairmanship, that includes the residential status of the
But-
planning
But
commission.
again, that's a legal
You're beating around the
opinion
bush. What do
that
you
we
mean
don't
by
have
that?
quite yet.
I mean,
residential
in our
status.
bylaws, it states that you can only serve on this commission because this commission only determines things in unincorporated Delta County, that you must also reside in unincorporated Delta
Who
County.
doesn't? I mean, just kick it out.
Well, it's a personal thing she's having.
She doesn't. Is this who she's talking
Who it
about
is?
or who are you talking
Quite
about?
I mean,
Come on.
There have,
multiple people.
there have been people, including myself, but that is on the agenda to
Mhm.
discuss later.
Mhm.
So
So
And
I'm
the
trying to
commissioner-
ask, I'm trying to.
And again, it circles
I'm
back to
trying to
the
get a
question.
compromise from you to say,
I
can we
know.
move forward with this? If I step down,
like I said,
please just answer my question. Can we move forward with Brock if I step down?
no, because we're still not abiding by our bylaws.
You're just still beating around the bush. Tell me
There's-
which
I
one
saw,
is it? This one
Victoria,
right
Well, the
here?
you're,
thing
you're
is-
presenting one thing's fact. I saw a separate resolution that the commissioners had made
Yes, sir, you did.
that seemed to allow for the different residential distribution. of-
Well, and here's where I can reference that the assembly above us, which is the Board of County Commissioners, when they act outside of their capacity, which is to assign members within our bylaw terms, everything they have assigned is null and void. So their assignment of the members that reside
That's
outside.
fine. I hear what you're saying. Is the
When you
county
read-
attorney on hold? Is he ready to opine on this? Because otherwise, we should just move forward. You're presenting a legal opinion, but we don't have a county attorney here to represent a separate opinion.
Our opinion and
I saw a
our
resolution that's
time
arguing something
doesn't
against
matter.
what you said. It was a
The
legally
laws
passed
matter.
resolution. A legally passed resolution certainly matters, and it was recorded. And so I'm gonna say that that resolution carries weight, and you're presenting an argument, you may be true. I'm not gonna present a legal argument in opposition to that. I would ask the county attorney to do that. If he's not on hold, then I think we move this thing forward, and this stuff could be taken up in court later.
So who, amongst us, who lives not in?
We'll talk
Okay,
about
yeah.
all that at the end of this. at the
That's
end
part
of-
of our
when we-
discussion.
When we have a discussion about it. I want to figure out how we move forward. Are you satisfied? Will you make a motion?
How we move forward is, like I said, I'm not knowledgeable of everything. I'm not a lawyer. But the information I do have goes against everything that you guys are telling me. So if you can provide me with legal proof, information that we are abiding by the law, then we can move forward as a legal entity.
Are you?
If we're not abiding by the law,
Are you saying
anything we do
we
here is a
can't-
waste of our time.
We can't meet tonight.
I think it's more
Unless
like an
we can-
innocent to proven guilty thing. If you can provide legal information,
I have
that,
provided it. If you
that
open your
an
email right
attorney
now,
can give
you
us
can
information
cite
ahead of this meeting,
anything that I
then
have
fine.
provided.
But in other words, let's move this thing forward, right?
So
Provide
as
the
the
legal
executive board,
information,
here we go.
get an attorney and get with the county
Victoria,
attorney.
would you
and
let
we can
someone
get
else take
a
a
settlement?
have the floor for just a second? Go ahead, Kate.
Victoria, I think we're at kind of an impasse. We've heard your opinion on whether this meeting should go on tonight. We've heard that you don't feel comfortable acting, or you don't feel ethical with the proceedings to continue based on your assessment of the legal standing. That is not the opinion of everyone in this room. You can make a motion to end tonight's hearing or table it again. You can make a motion to change the order of the agenda. Or you can choose to not vote on these matters because you don't feel like you want to be represented in what's happening. But you need to make a motion. You need to
have
make a
made a
suggestion.
motion. I
Okay,
have
so
made a
what is
motion.
your?
What's the
My
motion?
What is your
motion
motion?
Is that I have a point of information that I'm looking for. That is a motion. It's a secondary incidental motion. And if you would like me.
But so I
We don't
think
have
the chair,
information,
I think
we
the chair
can't
has
continue on
answered your.
legally.
So for us to
This must
accept the
be dealt
motion, we
with.
need a second. isn't
No,
it?
you don't. So in
Oh.
Robert's Rules of Order, this
So
action
how are you,
does not.
what are
need
you
a second.
looking, how are you looking to proceed? Are you
How
looking for the
looking-
meeting to end
It's for
tonight?
us to talk honestly about, are we following the laws here?
Well, I saw a resolution that said we were, so.
No,
Is
the
that
Board
good
of
enough?
County Commissioners who are also not
So
lawyers
I-
and
the-
sent that to Carl.
Point of
and
order,
Carl said,
please,
however.
point of order.
Thank you.
I do have a statement that the county attorney has weighed in. It is on the agenda later after the procs have their hearing in front of you. But I will read one portion that addresses the membership. It says, CRS 30-28-103 addresses the membership requirements of planning commission members. It states, each of such members of the commission shall be a resident of the county. In resolution number 2018 R-025, the Board of County Commissioners directed the PC to ensure that such rules adopted are consistent with 30-28-103. The PC bylaws 5.1 is in part inconsistent with the state statute and inconsistent with the BOCC's directive. Additionally, without dispute, the BOCC has the authority to create a planning commission and appoint members within the limitations of state statute. Again, CRS 30-28-103, 1 and 2. The PC has no authority to adopt bylaws in conflict with state statute and the BOC's direction. Summary. The PC has no authority to limit its own membership to those people who live in unincorporated areas of the Delta County. To the extent that PC bylaws 5.1 limits membership to only those who reside in unincorporated areas of Delta County, it is void since it is outside the authority of the PC and conflicts with state statute. So in the county attorney's words, right here in the memo, then the state statute rules, meaning that members just need to reside in Delta County, which they do based on 2018 R-025.
So that's the opinion from the county attorney.
Attorney,
And we're gonna, I mean, unless, I think that's the
That's
only
not-
legal opinion that we have to follow tonight. So that issue is off the table. Can we move forward if I step down as chair?
Forever or just right now for this?
For tonight, and we're still on the agenda to discuss it at the end, right? For the proc hearing right now.
Okay,
Will you
so-
accept that?
My biggest question right there
Well,
was
that answers
that,
the question. Mr. Chairman.
It does answer the question. So, I mean, I'm trying to address your.
Beyond that,
yes, for us to be within our
Okay,
bylaws, you must
So I'm gonna
resign
resign for
as
this hearing
president.
tonight, and
Just
I'm
for
gonna
tonight.
ask the vice chairman to take it on, and then we're gonna move on to the proc hearing.
thank you.
We'll keep moving forward.
But I would, before we
Thank
like
you.
to continue,
So
I
we're
would just
gonna
like to.
recognize other people right now.
I know, I just have one
No,
state
you
statute.
had your time.
We're done.
We're done. We're done.
She
We're done.
said her
We
legal
read
opinion.
it. We're
You're
moving
not an
forward.
attorney.
Victoria, if you need
I
to
just
continue to
wanna
disrupt,
state
I'll have you,
That
I'll
with
ask you
me
to remove
saying
yourself.
everything that I've said and sending out the information that I have, Colorado state statute will hold us liable if we are breaking the law because now we are knowledgeable.
Okay,
that we are
we've
breaking-
received attorney, we've received opinion from a certified attorney. You are not that. So please don't keep quoting what Colorado law
Yes,
is
I
gonna
don't
make
have
us
to be an
do.
attorney to read something.
You're not an attorney. That would be practicing law, and that's illegal.
We have
So Jacob,
point of
move
received
forward.
legal advice.
We're gonna stop, okay? Thank you. Mr. Queen, do you have any questions of staff
On the proc, man.
on PROC?
Going back to.
Sorry to call you out.
No, that's fine. Not at this time, I do not.
Cindy? I'm sorry.
I do not, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Cardi,
Minimum pass.
I don't.
You mentioned a T intersection.
Mhm.
Can you just talk about that a little bit? You're taking, can you bring the map back up? Where was it, D50 and Testman meet? That would become a T and a three-way stop? Is that what you're saying? Is that
1,600 in Testament.
No,
1,600? That's when.
sorry, give it just a second.
So that would, T intersection is there. So just,
So where it says project access location,
yeah.
to
That-
make that a T intersection.
And is that a recommendation from the county engineer since we have him here? That's not what it's
It was proposed, it was not necessarily a recommendation, it was
proposed
just
by the applicant or the engineer.
by staff.
By me.
It was,
And can I ask the engineer if anybody a little bit more information about that?
Yeah.
What makes you think that works? I'm just want a little bit more information on.
If you make it a three-way stop, you don't have people just going around that corner. So you're controlling that intersection. It would be a controlled intersection
People coming out onto Testament as well as people
on
traveling
Testament.
on Testament. in both
Correct.
directions.
And the stops would be from D50 road going south. And Testman
That whole
going,
road is Testman, and you
east.
turn south.
we're going west, is that right, Tim?
You would have a stop sign, 3 stop signs, one coming out of Proc, one going west on Tessman, and one going south on Tessman at that. So
So right
where
where the
the
arrow is,
northeast corner of Proc property, that would be the T intersection.
there you,
Okay,
Stop that way. Stop this way.
and it's come out of the, come out of the rock.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
That's the
and
traffic.
and I think when I want to certainly get your traffic engineer to weigh in, but for now, I just asked staff. Okay, thank you.
Anything?
No,
Tate? Mr. Schrock?
I don't think our engineer or staff have recommended a travel management plan. Is that right?
Correct.
But we could do that as a condition.
I mean, we could.
I mean, it would address routing, signage for events, things like that.
Mhm.
I was struck by staff in the earlier one that we talked about in the email, the 2-year-old event approval that we did for the stand issues, where staff actually addressed signage for events and things like that. It struck me that a travel management plan that would be kind of laid on top of the events would be a good thing to consider. And there would be routing of traffic, signing of traffic and things like that. I just want to make sure that we haven't had that recommended and that we could, in fact, maybe do that ourselves. In the approval of this. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, so the question I have is when we're leaving from 1600 Road on this map and going back in the west direction towards the Proc venue, there would be where I see that arrow right now where it says project access, there would be a stop sign there, correct? There would be one as you're coming out of the Proc event, there would be a stop sign there. And then one as you're coming north to south to the event, there would be a stop sign there. So during an event, would it be more advantageous for an individual to be there bringing people in instead of actually every person actually stopping? Or are you proposing that as people come, everybody would come to a 3-way stop and make the appropriate turn? Because if you have people coming off of or off of 1600 down Tessman, and everybody has to make a stop, most likely, most of those people are heading into this venue. I anticipate you would see people backing up more versus if you had hypothetically a yield coming down from coming down from 6 down north, maybe looking down west. So I would think for easier sake, maybe a yield sign coming into the venue would be more advantageous and safety issue.
Ready? I got one question for the engineer. With the stop signs, which I think something along these lines would help for sure. Stop and speed is great. The 7'6" lane, does that fit into this whole deal? Like, are you talking like RVs, pusher RVs coming in here? If there's one sitting there at a stop sign going out on a 7'6" lane and then one coming in, he's gonna take both lanes for sure. I just don't know if
That
I have a
is,
problem with the 7'6" lane.
that is one of the standards for a road.
You're assuming if there's a pusher RV sitting there going out, just, I'm not hypothetically speaking, it's not gonna happen because they're all gonna come in at one time, right? All go out at the same time.
Correct.
But if there is something parked there on that lane, kind of stop sign going out, then we got one coming in, that you think they got enough room to make that turn? Because if they can't make it on the corner down there in the county road, they're taking both lanes. I don't know if they're gonna make it there. I just think maybe that we ought to look at the lanes a little bit more, at least for a certain section until they get straightened out, maybe like flare it or something, I don't know.
And a follow-up question on that, I mean, there's probably big ag trucks that are coming 50 foot trailers coming out of there too. swinging that left-hand turn towards 1600 Road would be something that somebody should consider.
And Kate, you're talking about if I was coming from the west to the east to
Which
1600.
they probably go 348 anyway.
But I'm
right?
just, I think that's what you were
But I
saying,
was
just so I
talking
have a
about that,
visual.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
We'll
So
look at it.
I asked the question because I didn't want to imply that I agree with the stop signs, and I think you pointed out some very good points. I just wanted to get clarification. I think what you're asking is, I want to have myself, I want to hear more about that later on after we hear from the applicant,
Fair enough.
maybe what they're doing.
Sure.
I'm glad that staff weighed in those questions. They sort of follow me in terms of my thinking. I'm just not, I don't know. I didn't want to imply that the stop signs were good.
Oh, no.
Good, you got it right.
One more question in terms of just like how that happens to change that county road, to put in stop signs, make it an intersection, a through intersection versus what it is now. What's the cost of that? Who bears the cost of that? How does that get implemented in reality? And is that something that we can condition without like approval from Road and Bridge that that's gonna happen?
What do you mean without road and bridge?
Or
Traffic.
so, or yeah, traffic engine, if we're changing stop signs on county roads and not just requiring a stop sign on the private road going onto county road, like what's the like, how does that happen? I
At a
guess?
minimum, a traffic count,
Okay,
which the traffic counts in that area were done in 2020 or 2021, I believe.
and that traffic count would happen before implementation of this project, or it would only happen after the events start going and then then county figures out that we need more traffic control there? Like, I guess, how do we?
You could do another traffic count, but the one was done is not that old. I don't think that the traffic has increased that much on that area.
I guess the question is,
So-
can we just put one
Yeah.
in regardless of the counts, or does it have to
Yeah.
meet the thresholds?
That would go before the commissioners.
Okay,
They're the final say on that. I would do the traffic study. I could do a traffic count and make a recommendation to the board, but they would be the final decision.
I think that was one of the concerns of many of the neighbors was when that traffic count was maybe done, and I appreciate you think it was 20 or 21.
Yeah,
Because
Larry
that was a
Record was
concern
still
when that was-
foreman when that happened and he retired.
What
in-
was the specific concern? Specific concern about the?
Wasn't a concern, I was just wondering, I had heard at our last meeting about how some of the neighboring residents were talking about the traffic. And I was just wondering when I was appreciative that he gave us a traffic date, like he thought it was 20 or 21, is that right?
Yeah, Larry Record was still here and he retired in 2021.
21, he did, okay, thank you.
Do we know what time of the year during that year it was taken?
I don't know off the top of my head. I can look into it, but
Oh, I bet it
I
varies
bet
a
it
lot.
does.
Oh, yeah. One with peak.
I would say
Late
summer, harvest time.
That'd be something to look at.
Yeah.
When I mentioned the travel management plan, I sort of had in mind of actually us conditioning a route for ingress egress to the site. And I've been thinking about Highway 345 as a major access from Delta to the site. 348, sorry. As an alternative to what I'm hearing, the problem of Testament at 1600 Road. So do we condition a route, so here's your approval, but you got to use this traffic route, and any kind of advertising of this.
I was gonna say, Mr. Chair, I mean, you're in the period of asking questions of staff versus deliberation, and we still haven't heard from the applicant or their traffic engineer. So,
Yeah, we're in the details about stop signs at an intersection. I thought I would add this as an alternative to that.
Keep some language in your head. If there's any other questions of staff, we'll hear from the applicants and or their engineer at this time. If you have anything else to add, or if you just want to field questions.
yeah, I mean, I'll probably just field questions. I think I'd turn it over to Skip, but, you know, he's an engineer and an expert in that traffic field, and
I think that it's important that we look at how much usage is on that road, and if we're looking at an event that's, you know, potentially one day a week, how much traffic's actually on it. So I'd rather refer to him and let him address those questions.
Sure.
Could you go first and explain your conversations yesterday?
So my name is Brenda Brown. I work for the Procs. I've been with them for about 4 years. And we decided to do this event. We've been doing party rentals and such for several years. I have been a wedding planner for almost 30 years now. So this is just not something new to me. I've lived in Delta all my life. And I've been to many venues in Delta County and have traveled all the roads. And none of them are really that wonderful to be traveling on when people are drinking anyway. And there's SMK event centers. There's P Green Hall out past a little ways. There's this new one just right up by where we are planning ours. Yeah, it's a little smaller than what we are doing, but there is one there as well. So that being said, when we decided to do this event venue, I guess is what you want to call it, we had come up with certain numbers. Like I said, I've done weddings forever, and my weddings usually consist of 100 to 150 guests, and that's usually tops. Out of the almost 30 years I've been doing this, I've had 2 weddings that have been 300 guests. So that number, the 400 number, I'm sure sticking with everyone's head, thinking, okay, that's too many people on that road. That is not going to happen, especially every weekend. That would be wonderful if it did, but it's not going to. So 100 to 150 guests is what we are looking at per event. Yes, we are going to have a few extras every once in a while. And that is, I have spoke to the board members of the hospital, and they just had a gala a couple months ago that I did. And that was a little over 300 guests. They are wanting to do the next gala at our venue if it's able to be done, because they can provide a bigger area for more people. So maybe 1 or 2 events per year would be a little over that 150, but that's it. So as all of the neighbors here, we are not going to have that many people driving up and down that road always. And it is a weekly, or maybe not even a weekly per month. I mean, I'm hoping to have at least 2 or 3 events per month, but who knows? We'll have to just see what happens. But it's not going to be that many people on that road at all times. And, you know, at a wedding, not everyone goes to these weddings at the same exact time. They're going to be trickling in and out, coming in, you know, who knows what time. And we have talked, Zach and I and Jen have talked, and we are going to not hold it open more than midnight. We have talked about that. And even at midnight, we will definitely just close everything down. They could come back the next morning to clean up. So there will not be people out on the road at 1:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. And I just wanted to make that clear to everyone so that you know that what we are planning on doing, and this is not something that we are new at. We've been doing it for many years, but it just hasn't been our own venue. It's been other venues that we've been providing our product to, okay? So if you have any questions, just let us know.
Can you talk to the sheriff?
And I did talk to the sheriff yesterday. We had, I had received an email Monday morning when I got to work in regards to some comments and concerns that he was aware of from some of the neighbors because of traffic and late night parties, the alcohol. And so he was not very happy. But when I went in and met with him, when he heard my side of the story and what we were going to be doing, and not necessarily all the stories that he had heard, he was much better. And he was okay with things at that point in time. And he understood more so because he did not know what was happening. Supposedly, he didn't even know that there was going to be an event center built out there. So that being said, once I sat and talked to him and explained to him what we were going to be doing, then he was much better. And he approved and thinks that it will be fine. And he knows that, you know, the road has been the same way for years. And like I said, there's been events all over Delta. And none of the roads are very good in different directions that you go. But it's just how you do things. And we're building an event center that is going to be good for Delta and hopefully bring in money to the community. So it's not like we are just trying to cause conflict or troubles with any of the neighbors. We are trying to work with everyone as best as we can and do what we have to do to make this right and not just be another pain in everyone's side. So I hope everyone now can understand that it's not going to be the 400 people every single weekend and traveling on those roads, okay? Thank you.
Sit here. I just put my stuff on. Good evening, Commission. My name is Skip Hudson. My address is P.O. Box 69, Mesa, Colorado. A little bit about me and my background, and I don't say this to brag. Some of the numbers actually scare me because I just calculated it. But I'd like you to consider me a resource for all your traffic and transportation planning questions. But this is the scary part. I've been doing this for 39 years. And I didn't realize it'd been that long. Along that time, I've spent 2 years with the Federal Highway Administration as the state traffic and safety engineer for Utah. I spent 3 years working for CDOT here in Region 3 out of Grand Junction. And the rest of the time has been consulting like I am for the Prox here. So, you know, in terms of event centers, I've studied existing event centers where a lot of the information that I used in this study came from, and studied event venues all the way up to major league ballparks. So, you know, like I said, I'm here as a resource and I'm happy to answer your questions. Could I start with some of the things that were just talked about? Please. All right. So travel management plan. I've done those for bigger venues when there's multiple routes. You know, it could be done here. And information to travelers like signs are an important aspect of that. So a travel management plan could be done. One of my cautions though is the discussion kind of evolved into mandated routes. This is your mandated route. Everybody's got one, they put in the address and it takes them there. The thing about traffic engineering, a couple things. Number one, everybody's a traffic engineer because they all drive. The second thing is I'm not dealing with molecules or predictable things. We're dealing with human behavior. And that throws a wild card into, you know, things like mandated routes. And we run into this with gravel pits. And I apologize I couldn't be here the last meeting, but I was in a Montrose County public hearing for a gravel pit. You probably read about that one in the paper. It's been a lot of fun. But you know, the same things are coming up with mandated routes now. The gravel pit, you know, they can control the trucks because the operator is running them. You can, you know, there's fines and stuff if they don't follow it. But for people coming to a place, they're gonna do what's in their phone. They're gonna follow that route.
A quick question on that. Wouldn't it just force all the traffic onto one route instead of dispersing it over multiple routes to really lessen the impact? I mean, lessening the impact would not be mandating a route because you're dispersed.
You're dispersing it through the grid system versus putting it on one. So, you know, you are condensing the impacts.
Right.
So
So
yeah.
we're looking to lessen the impacts then.
Right.
When you start talking about like neighbors with 900 cars going out in the daily
Right.
too, versus heading back to the highway.
Yeah, and I do want to help quantify the volumes on the existing road and the proposed volumes. So you guys have a perspective on what those are. But yeah, I mean,
Wait, what's the volume?
traffic volumes.
Volume.
Volume, sorry, yeah. So in terms of, there was a lot of discussion about the access itself to Tessman at the 90-degree curve. You know, we want this to be safe. We want this to work. I mean, it's not to our advantage to have an entrance to an event center where people feel like they're in danger. So we're motivated to do the right thing. And there's a whole bunch of options that can be done in terms of traffic control at that location. It starts from temporary traffic control, which is actually called uniform traffic control, where you have a certified flagger or an off-duty enforcement officer standing out there and manually controlling traffic as it comes in and out. Obviously, that would only be done during events. My recommendation would only be done, if that was going to be an approach, that would only be done for the hour before the event starts. And there was a slide that Kate showed that we'll pull up in a minute and talk about. So that's not a permanent thing. It's, you know, we're talking 35 events a year. You know, so, you know, basically 10% of the days of the year will be an event. So like Brenda said, it's not 100% of the time when this is happening. So the lowest level of implementation would be that uniform traffic control, which could be done. And I'm not sure that any decisions have been made or recommendations from anybody. I think there's just been discussion about different options. The other option is to realign that access road so it ties into the 90-degree curve. I don't want to say perpendicular because it's a curve, but radially to the curve. And then that could be stop controlled. It's actually a desirable configuration to do that because they've got great sight distance, because they come into that and they can look north all the way up. They can look east all the way along Tessman both those ways. And my diagram that was showed the project access, and it was a little confusing when I saw it because it's labels on the inside of the curve, but the access, as you've seen, is actually on the outside of the curve. So, you know, that's pretty standard. You have a driveway coming onto a road, you have a stop sign at it. So that would be the next level. The third level would be what's called an all-way stop control, in this case, three-way stop control. That is by far the safest option because everybody's got to stop and look at each other and make a decision. Some of the comments we heard from the sheriff about, 90-degree curve, people running off the road, people driving in ditches. One way to address that perhaps is to stop people at that location and have everybody look around. There is a federal document that controls traffic control devices called the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And they have criteria in there for when you can do certain traffic control at intersections. And one of them is, traffic signals have to meet tests. But if you're going to do an always stop control, there's also criteria for that. And it's based on a certain amount of volume. It's usually higher volumes, usually much higher volumes than what we see on Tessman Road right now. So I could do that study, but I can tell you what the results are going to be. It wouldn't be warranted for that. But, Delta County can choose that option if they like. It's just, there's a federal recommending thing that's out there. Who makes access intersection changes, whether it's putting the stop signs? A lot of my experiences with CDOT, and CDOT's pretty clear on this. If there's stuff that needs to be done, mitigation for traffic impacts, then the applicant doesn't. And they just don't do them on their own. In the CDOT process, there's a traffic study, there's a concept that's recommended, and then there's a set of construction plans that are prepared. In this case, it'd be pretty simple. And then those plans are reviewed and approved by the county engineer to make sure he's comfortable with what's going on. And then the applicant would install those. Or perhaps, the applicant would provide some money and the county forces would install it. There's different ways that I'm not sure how the county engineer does it, but typically those mitigations are paid for by the applicant. And in some cases, instructed by the applicant and approved by the county. Let's talk about traffic counts for a minute. The county does do traffic counts, and county engineer provided those to me. And it showed on Tessman Road, I don't know the exact date of those counts.
There is not an exact day, it's only by year.
Yeah, it's only by year, but almost all traffic counts by local agencies are done in the summer. So that would put it more in the peak time than right now, for example.
It's more realistic.
Yeah, exactly. And I believe the number was 506 or,
503. I have it up on my computer, so.
okay. Yeah, it was 503 on Testman Road, just to the west of 1600 Road. And then it drops down as you continue further west, it gets down to like 253. And these are vehicles per day. These are daily traffic volumes. And the volumes on 1600 Road, quite a bit to the south, down by B Road, was about 1,600 vehicles a day. So I will tell you that there is a national guideline, and there's actually design documents, design guidance for what's called low volume roads. And that threshold for a low volume road is 500 vehicles a day. So Testman Road is 3 vehicles over the low volume road criteria. So it's from my perspective, working on interstates and a bunch of other stuff, this is about as low volume as roads get. All right, so I've gone through the things that were talked about today. I'm happy to answer or entertain any other questions.
Steve?
No, I'm sure we'll come back to it. Signage, I think, is maybe a really important issue for us.
Sorry about destination signage, like event center this way type stuff.
Yeah. And I still think that routing, particularly maybe in terms of their advertisement, that here's the preferred routes of getting to this event center and on the website, maybe something that we want to help them encourage them to do. And I agree that dispersal of traffic is always good, and I'm not sure that Highway 348's that spectacularly better than 1600 Road, but it is more of a central access from Central Delta out there with signage on Highway 348 going east on D Road. It may give some of the neighbors some alleviation of that traffic off 1600 to Testman. If that kind of routing was done in advertising.
So
it's all I'm thinking about.
So Brenda, in your experience with events in this area, what's your estimate on where people are coming from and going to in general?
That there depends too, because they could be coming from the Montrose area or, Grand Junction area, and if they come from Grand Junction, they're going to probably go to the highway to hit that stop sign and come up 1600 Road. That's just the more logical way to go. But yeah, everyone's going to take their own way. There's some that like to go the back roads, so they will come through 348. It just depends on how long they've lived in the area and what roads they know, because they're going to take the road that is the easiest for them.
So for wedding events, there could be more of a regional draw, people coming from other places with airports, for example. But if you're doing, a hospital event, it'd probably be more local people that know the roads and they know how they want to get there.
Correct.
So the other thing is, it would be possible to stipulate that in certain advertising or contracts, that the event center provide travel information.
Most preferred route or something like that.
Yeah, things like that.
I
Because
think, Steve, that's what you're talking about, is instead of everybody having kind of the same route, is that they would have maybe different preferred routes based on where those individuals might be coming from. Is that what you're
Actually
thinking?
gonna do that though, if they're coming out of Montrose or wherever, they're gonna.
Well, if they're coming out of Montrose, they probably want to turn whatever 16, however it comes into Highway 50. I don't know.
Well, if they're coming in from Olathe side, they're probably gonna hit 5500, coming to 1600 down to Testman, I would guess.
Yeah,
Right.
I think it goes against, we're dictating to.
Where they should be driving,
specifics
I think
on,
it should be, yeah. it's
People are
not-
gonna use their phone to get there however, and it's
Well,
gonna be.
all I'm talking about now is advertising, really. And,
Right.
but what we would encourage them to do, promote in advertising.
They don't
And
wanna
on their website, for example, here's the best way to get there.
Well, it might be a good time to quantify and talk about the amount of project traffic. Kate, could you bring up that? She's way ahead. So like I said before, this data comes from actual event centers that we've counted the traffic in and out over the whole period before and after, in terms of some of the percentages and things that I've done. Let me look at my copy so you guys can. look at that. All right, so, this assumes a 5 p.m. start. Events are going to change, so it's all kind of relative, but just assuming a 5 p.m. event start. And you know this because we've all been to these events before, but everybody comes to the event in the hour before it starts. Not the wedding party and stuff like that. They're there and they've been there. And in this case, they might be staying on site. So, the attendees come in the hour before. We've got assumed time prior to 4 p.m. We've got 12 vehicles for the wedding party, caterers, bride, groom, employees, all that stuff. They trickle in, maybe the day before or earlier that day. And this would be on a Saturday, most likely. And then we've got from 4 to 5 p.m. the guests arrive. So, I've got 160 maximum vehicles there. So how did I come up with that? The Federal Highway Administration has published a book called Managing Special Events. It gets into travel plans and travel routes and stuff like that. Their research has showed for these kind of events that there's an average of 2.5 people per car. So it's simply the max, like Brenda said, we want approval to do the rare but higher volume thing that's being proposed, and that's that 400 vehicles. So 400 divided by 2.5 gets us 160
for their events, is that gonna be the safest? Or will that be safe and the most expeditious for all the traffic, even if it's once a week or twice a week or whatever for the events? You know, assuming they're doing 100 to 200 people. I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure out how do we make this function at the safest level for the residents and the rest of the traffic? Because I hear there's a lot of conversation about how everybody's gonna leave, but 160 cars getting in, you couldn't, you know, all in within an hour, wouldn't fit on Testman Road. They'd be out onto the 1600 road in both directions, whether they're coming from Montrose or Grand Junction. They're all have to be on 1600 road to Testman. 160 cars. If I live further in and I just made it up thinking one every 10 seconds, that would take 6 minutes, you know, just to get through the many cars. You said it was once every 22 seconds. That if I'm waiting to get in, that would take me an hour almost to get in. How do we make that function efficiently, even if it is only 1 hour a week?
Maybe I wasn't clear on how I described that one event vehicle every 22 seconds on average. So I'm gonna do the math to see what the existing traffic would be. So generally we see 10%, the peak hour traffic equals 10% of the daily traffic. So we had 500 per day times 0.1 equals, 5. So, no, 50. So we got 50. So we've got one vehicle on Testman every minute. And we've got one event vehicle every 22 seconds. So there's very little, there's lots of gaps in those traffic. So I don't see people stopping out on Testman Road waiting to cross and make the turn because they're going to see a vehicle every 1 minute. So 3 event vehicles can turn for every one vehicle coming at them on Testman.
So maybe address if there is an issue with traffic, will the uniform traffic control be the best way to manage this?
Well, what I would recommend is we don't know what we don't know. And we can speculate and I can do calculations and we can use our experience and guess, but typically when this comes up, if there's a concern about something, it's a condition of approval that says, if traffic and safety problems arise, then you shall resolve it. And you can specify with uniform traffic control or other methods as approved by the county engineer. You can make that a condition of approval that if something does happen, you've got that ability to implement that.
I'm aware of that. I'm just trying
By
to
what
get
metric though?
more input from you on the value of having a uniform traffic control versus stop signs or anything or nothing.
Well, when you make these decisions, there's a bunch of criteria, and you brought up a good point about, for 35 hours a week, do we want to affect all the other drivers the rest of the time? So that's a disadvantage of like a 3-way stop out there. The uniform traffic control, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't see any traffic issues, delay or queuing of vehicles anywhere. So I'm not sure why we're trying to solve a problem that I don't think is going to happen.
Okay,
Can I ask you a question?
Can I finish?
Yeah, sir.
One more, and I'll let you do it. Did you model a second entrance point for this venue at all on any of your analysis? Because there was a conversation that we had the last time about trying to get a second access point on the south side with the church or Mr. Graves. I just want to know, did you look at that in any of your analysis?
Well, it's interesting because when I did this letter 2 times, and the first time I didn't address the emergency access, but it came out of comments and I did address it to some degree. But my focus was really more on what the fire department or fire experts were saying, and also county code about, what does the main access need to be to accommodate this and get 2-way travel if people are coming out, can an emergency vehicle get in at the same time, and things like that. It is a public safety issue to have emergency access, so it's important. That typically isn't covered in a traffic study. So I haven't analyzed a second access point. My understanding that if I'm looking at the daily operations of the event, an emergency access would be just that. It would, hopefully it never needs to be used, but it would be there And if that happened, then there'd be all kinds of enforcement people around to direct traffic, out. So I did not, the answer is no, I did not study because it wouldn't be used in the operational part that I looked at.
Okay.
You're gonna propose a engineered traffic plan, correct, in this next stage of this application process, if there's a reason to? And you would propose that with the county engineer and they would okay it. So do we need to get into the details of where stop signs should go? Isn't that something that the traffic engineer would propose as the best method?
Yeah, I mean, the planning commission could simply say, condition of approval is work with county engineer to identify a mutually acceptable traffic control configuration at the intersection.
And we don't necessarily have to try to dictate all this at this point. You're the expert,
yeah.
you're the expert, you guys can agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I have to ask.
No, thanks for your presentation. It was clarifying.
Kate, can we pull up a map so we can see that thing?
Let's see the access intersection.
That one right there. So obviously, we're gonna come out on 1600 Road. That's where most of this traffic is gonna come. I feel like obviously a stop sign coming out of the event is needed, but I've came full circle. I don't think we need to affect the traffic all day, every day. If they're in agreement to maybe putting a flagger out there, I think it would help just on an event, I think that's the way I would go. The question is, there's another wedding venue there. Do you know anything about that? Right close to you there?
Uh-huh.
What kind of people are, they throw a shindig, same time you're gonna throw a shindig, right?
Yeah, but hers is 35 max. It's
30.
because she's in a subdivision.
I hear you. So it's 35 and that's pretty well followed, or do you know that?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's in a subdivision, it's in her home and it's just a small.
And where does it come out? Where's
It's
that
right off of
subdivision?
1600 Road, a little further.
That away?
Yeah, it's
So is this-
probably
The
about
southern entrance
before
of
you hit
Dry
the-
Creek.
So right
Farther
there
down,
is where-
Brenda.
down further.
Down, right there.
So basically, whatever she's putting in is gonna hit this about the same time. Does she shut down, give or take around when you're shutting
She shuts
down?
down at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock, so that's good. So-
Correct.
All right, that was that question. Yeah, that's about it. That's kind of what I'm saying. Thank you.
I am fine. Appreciate presentation.
So this may be a little bit outside of your area of focus with your profession, but on the entrance to the proposed property, do you feel that it is adequate, given the volume of traffic and the size of vehicles to be coming in and out of that access? It seems fairly narrow to me.
We had an image that showed the intersection and I think a picture or maybe a zoom of an aerial or something. Maybe the one with the irrigation. Yeah, right down there. All right. This image on the bottom is, I think, the best picture we have here. So, technically there's two access points that come together here. This is the access to Tessman. And I'm not sure about this one. Is this?
That's the entrance, and that's the neighbors. This is Testament.
The Testment's.
Right, Testman's here, but this is your access.
No, one is the lower one. And the other one is the neighbor. So we're going west.
North is to your right.
This isn't you?
No.
The other one. Okay.
There you go.
Need a bigger road.
Yeah, well, yeah, so we've got two, technically what is happening is we've got one intersection here of these two that come together and go out and tie to another intersection. So there's two intersections side by side. So it'd be desirable to have the access come in, like I said, radial like this with a stop sign here. So I don't know if there's any way to realign this so that it comes in and both these come in like that. But that would be the configuration that would be closest to what's out there now.
And we would do a widened corner right there. I already met with a guy that drives a fire truck and does all the emergency stuff. He said that corner as is now, he has no problems with taking his ladder truck in there as is. But we would widen that area, you know, to where this is nice and easy to turn in here. There's lots of access. So we just widen this a little bit and then come down to a 20-foot wide.
And that's what I'm talking about. So coming out, you know, radially from the curve and then tying back into this.
So that'd be part of that access plan that I'm talking about, or access, site plan, access plan.
Right,
Put together, give it to the county engineer.
exactly.
So you're thinking 20 feet instead of 7.6 twice or 6?
20 foot is what I agree to.
Are you going for 20? I don't know.
So coming in with a camper or coming out with a camper, having it widened like that would give you that nice radius to pull right up on the road or pull into the property. I'm seeing by your presentation.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and it's all slow travel speed, low travel speed.
Sure.
And you know, it's like, you know, two ag vehicles meet on a county road, they figure it out.
Yeah.
So when you get that rare thing where there might be campers or large vehicles in there, one would stop and wave the other one on. Or
Right.
whatever it is.
When talking about the volume of traffic, it appears very favorable when we assume that this is going to be neatly and evenly spaced over 60 minutes.
Right.
I think that's probably not going to be very realistic in the fact that I think that window of when the majority of participants are going to arrive is going to be shortened to a quite narrow window.
Well, we've seen them dispersed, but there is a certain amount of queuing, you know, we've all been there, there's a slow driver and other people want to go faster, so there might be groups or queues of or platoons, I should say, of more than one vehicle, and they're not spaced out, they're all right there. So I agree with you that when I say an average of 22, it's probably not going to happen like that. There's probably going to be a few who come in, then a longer gap, maybe a minute or two, and then a few more that come in. But the background traffic is very consistent, that you know, the 500 vehicles a day or 50 an hour, you know, they're just traveling randomly. So the gap where people could make a left turn off Tessman, that would be more consistent. And we're still talking about, you know, more than a minute between those conflicting vehicles. So event traffic will pump up to some degree, but I don't think the background traffic will.
Okay. One question for staff. Kate, did we ever receive a response from Delta County Road and Bridge on any comment?
Not Road Bridge specifically, no.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Victoria?
No questions at this time.
Okay. The only question I had, I went up there today and we talked about, you know, the quote mandated route, which is our phones. My phone tried to send me up Old Testament, which has that barricade on it. I mean, without like, you know, talking to Google, can we do anything about that?
That's about it. I've had to do that at my private residence. I live in the twilight zone because my road, there's Golden Drive and I'm on East Golden Drive, and none of the programs recognize my address or the mapping. So I've actually had to petition Apple and Google to do that. And did it work? I haven't checked. The Apple, I've got an iPhone and the iPhone works okay. I think it was more the Google map. But there is a formal way, if you just Googled, you know, notifying of road changes or something.
Can I say something for that?
Sure.
You know, if you've been to a wedding, most people that do weddings, they put balloons like all the way down the road to the event. So, and every one that I have been to, they've done that. They've put signs from the highway, and as you drive up a little bit further, they'll put balloons there or some kind of signage. That is usually done almost at every event that I've ever been at.
Okay.
You bring up a good point because the mapping is not always accurate.
Is there any other questions of staff and or applicant before we go to the public comment?
I do.
Mr. Shaw.
I'd like to explore the fire suppression a little bit more. I felt we didn't get very far on that, had questions about it with respect to water, fire hydrants and things, and now I see this price for a fire hydrant looks like a lot. But I'm not quite satisfied, Mr. Brock, with you. I mean, as you talked about it last time, we'd rather lose a building than lose people, and I understand that. But I still want to try to make sure that we have some sort of understanding of fire suppression in the building. I understand that in a commercial kitchen, you're going to have a fire suppression requirement on a stove under public health laws. Is that right?
Yeah, if you had a fire or a gas stove, you would have to have the whatever type of hood they would
But
require.
doesn't the restaurant guy with our health department say when you're putting in a commercial kitchen, you've got to have an automatic fire suppressor over your stove?
It depends on what kind of stove it is, and you know, we're not required to put one of those stoves in this particular building, but you're right, if you're just asking about a stove and you gotta put it in a restaurant, there are certain regulations to go on.
Well, I thought there was, and you know, that's obviously one of the big issues of a restaurant, commercial kitchen kind of a thing, is that a fire could start.
Big fire extinguisher with those big alarms.
Yeah, I thought they were required.
Well, and this kitchen is gonna be it's going to be catering. We're not going to be cooking per se in this kitchen. We're gonna have caterers that will be coming and bringing there, and that will have warming ovens and such for them.
I thought we heard commercial kitchen.
We said we do, you know, we'd set it up to where we try to do it both, you know, but if there, whatever regulation is involved with that particular stove, and if that's required by a health department to have an extinguishing hood, that's what we'll do.
Yeah, I just thought I heard commercial kitchen. That's where I was coming from. And that helped me understand a little bit. There would be some fire suppression in the building.
Yeah, it will be.
But I also have a question, and maybe Todd can help, given he's the fire guy, about internal fire suppression. I mean, I would grant you that a fire hydrant extended to the property is an expensive proposition. But maybe internal fire suppression through other kinds of means of fire extinguishing systems that could be built in there that may be water, but may not be water, and whether or not in your own building design, you could think of that.
So with the current fire code that is like in Montrose County, if Delta had one, which they don't have one, so I ran this all through my architect, which is Monda Architecture. And I sent that information to Kate as well. He did a design review and went through it and said, basically, hey, if you've got this many exterior doors, you got this many ways to get people out of there, then by code, you are not required to have fire suppression. So that's what we did. We ran that through that architectural analysis, had him do a code review on it, make sure that we had enough exits and everything was good to get everybody out there. When I think overall, when we're dealing with a volunteer fire department, you know, our structure is always in safety a little bit. And if Delta's gonna make some major changes, then I think that we'll probably save more buildings. But in the meantime, what we're worried about is that safety. And so we did do that design by an architect to make sure that everybody can get out of the building and do that well.
So you're saying if we had a code, it wouldn't even require it?
That's correct.
You say Phil Motley?
Yes.
So he was the architect who reviewed the fire safety egress situation.
That's good.
Yeah, I guess I'm not altogether comfortable with that, but because I still think
if you had a
big
code,
doors or not, you know, if something can happen wrong, it's likely to happen wrong, and that's in a venue with people and all kinds of things. But
Is this all one story? One level?
Yeah, it's got like a little mezzanine on the top, so you could look over the edge, but pretty much.
Not a lot of people, yeah.
Can you at least give us some assurance that there would be fire extinguishers inside?
Of course. Definitely, at all exits, yes, of course.
So I'm following up. The suppression's one thing, but as far as an escape plan, I mean, this thing's got, I don't see enough doors on this thing, and there's no code, so we shouldn't necessarily be requiring it, but you've designed your bathrooms to ADA standards. So I think that it's reasonable, we have to approve, recommend approval based on health, safety, welfare, that there are enough exits. I see 1 6-foot door and a 20-foot sliding glass door that's probably closed in the wintertime. Those things are heavy and I don't see anything else. So I think the plans, I wouldn't mind seeing some sort of certification by this person who's done, that shows that this lives up to a certain code as far as fire safety is concerned. Not building code, nothing like that, not talking suppression. But I don't see a lot of doors on this thing.
Well, I mean, I had an architect look at it. It's, based on fire code, it is up to code if we had a code. It does have a fair number of.
So we could condition, that you provide that sort of documentation.
Sure.
And then my other question is the hotel rooms, are they open if there's no event? Is the hotel rooms open all the time?
We just set it up basically as like a VRBO. If I had a VRBO in one of the neighboring subdivisions, I could run that VRBO when I wanted to run it. I assume that same thing would be fine on this property.
So neighbor they got family coming to town, they just want to rent it out, they're, just not a
Sure.
family, so could provide a little bit of massive there. That's all.
So the VRBO, you're not tying the rental of those rooms or the RV spaces to the events. You want to be able to rent them to anybody at any time.
I would like to be able to do that. I think that would be the same standard as everybody else around.
Okay, and we heard from a lot of the neighbors the last time. I'm just curious to know, did you have any additional conversations with neighbors that we should be aware of that maybe you're making some changes based on some of their concerns?
Yeah, we talked to talked to a lot of the neighbors that were, our adjacent neighbor in Snafflebit. They were all here at the beginning of this meeting and then, didn't make it through the whole thing. But I think we have a lot of support in that subdivision now. We agreed to, shut everything down at midnight, their main request. And they said that as long as we were doing that basically they didn't have any other problems with it.
And as I remember looking at that map where it says east, down at the bottom, is there a residence right there?
There is one that sits back in.
That'd be across the street, right? What about on the other side, same side as your entrance? Isn't there,
There is one right on the corner, yes.
do you think there's any need for screening between them and you? I mean, you've got all your cars coming down there, even if it's midnight, you got somebody's bedroom there.
Well, I think the natural corner of Tessman shines their headlights in that particular house. Every time I go on the county road, our road would parallel their house. And then there's a pretty big berm there as well. The staff took a picture of. I don't think there's much of a reason there. He's got a fence there as well. If something comes up and we need to screen it, I don't want to cause anybody any problems, but we can do that. It's a little bit difficult to do in that access with Uncompahgre Valley water users because all of that is an access.
And the berm is part of Uncompahgre water. It's not your berm, right? I mean, they can take it away.
They could, but the ditch wouldn't be very effective without it.
That was all.
Anything else? Kate, did you receive any comment from Delta County Fire Protection District? Yeah, so it was my understanding that you will. And then there's another entity that we're waiting on comment from that pertains to fire protection. Is that correct?
I mean, based on our conversation with Delta County Emergency Management, we reached out to state to see if there's any state regulations since we don't have fire codes, but I haven't heard back from them as of yet.
I know the NFPA has regulations, which believe that's what the city of Delta has adopted. That has a requirement of a fire hydrant being within 400 feet of large occupancy buildings. And based on occupancy, having a fire suppression system installed in the building. Both of which take very large volumes of water. For the fire suppression sprinklers, it seems like they're putting out a little bit of water. It is a tremendous draw on that infrastructure to be able to provide that. And I at least think that's something that should be considered.
So if we can't get a fire hydrant there, how would they support that with, could it be done from a pond and pumped?
It can, and there's ways to calculate volume requirements. I know in some of the more remote subdivisions and things like that, like in Log Hill or up in Ridgeway and that, they will put in buried cisterns and things like that for fire suppression. And there's a very calculated way to determine that capacity based on length of runtime, things like that.
Hans freeze.
With that.
Yeah. Hans freeze. So, but there are, I mean, we talked about that in terms of even our fire impact fees, about how they could be spent, and, you know, way back when we had people talking about underground storage systems to do remote fire fighting without fire hydrants.
I agree. I understand the, cost of running it, and that's not an option if it's not, but I still think it's something that needs to be addressed. I mean, I think that there needs to be something on site, some sort of system to hammer this thing, because like you said, we haven't restricted this to one day a week, none of that. I mean, it could turn into like, this is the craze, and then here we got an outfit that has a lot more use than we maybe intended. I think it needs some sort of design, or I would go the buried tanks deal and get a system design that puts water on this bad boy. That's why I think.
I did talk to, can you pull up the one, Kate, from Tri-County that shows the location of the hydrants? So from this hydrant to the property line, I believe it's less than 1,000 feet. I talked to, I didn't have very much luck with our volunteer fire department. And so I talked to several guys that are on the fire department trucks, and they all said, hey, if we're gonna go fight this fire, we're gonna come in there, we're gonna run over there to that hydrant, everybody carries 1,000 feet of transfer line with them. We would run the transfer line right over to the base of the hill, and then we'd run 2 trucks. And they said that's what Delta's got, 2 trucks. That's what they would do as well. They really didn't think that there was any issue, and that hydrant is pretty close. I mean, yeah, we'd have to cut across the field, but I think that there's a pretty good response time.
Fences or any landscaping obstacles or anything like that on the properties that are between you and that fire hydrant?
There's a couple of fences, but they all have, with that soft line, it's pretty easy to run it right through the fence. So there's no privacy fences, there's no anything that would have to go over the top of the ditch.
I think we already set a precedence on fire hydrants so this year. Not being close enough to a minor subdivision, so if with some of the stuff, the whole subdivision, there's a fire hydrant within 100 feet of the line, and they're putting in a new one. So that's right in the driveway. So on a major event, and that's a little 3-house subdivision. And this is a major event. I mean, maybe we can talk about if they got too much hydrant there, cap that one off, bring a line over, get it across the ditch. So when they're pulling through, man, they just hammer down. I mean, if that 12 houses doesn't need 2 hydrants, maybe something could be done where that one is Yahtzee, bring it on over, which will open up, should be able to open up some. And you can't look at the future, but if this school is there, give or take, we can't talk about that, but man, we need something needs to be over there on the side of this ditch where you just pull up to her and get after it. Maybe you and them. I just really think something's gonna happen.
Are we okay with where we're at with? We're gonna open up public comment. I'm gonna read from the list. If anyone hasn't, at the end, I'll just do a double check at the end, see if anyone else wants to speak. I have Ron Hayes first.
Yeah, and I live 2153 Testman Road. Through all of this, when I first found out about it from Brenda, I guess in the back of my mind is, wow, that's a great idea and Delta County needs it. But what's in it for me? We just built a wonderful house right there. Spent a lot of money on it. Money which was hard earned. Now I see that the county won't even fix the signs. You're not even going as far as where the major intersections are, where the accidents are. You're basing the traffic count on a 2-year-old study. And I can list right now 12 teenagers that have just gotten their driver's licenses from these subdivisions. They're driving it every day. So I think a traffic counter needs to be out there. You don't take into consideration that that is zoned ag. There's no signs in that part of the county because they get knocked over by this large ag equipment and they don't get set back up. When the stop sign was stolen at the corner of Snaffle Bit there in Testman Road, it took 10 days to get it replaced. That's, I just see the disappointment, I'm also on the board of the Elks, and ever since we required a security guard at our events, nobody's booked one. So that knocked us out of that. The club manager just verified that. But that's neither here nor there. You want to do a traffic count? Come sit in my front yard all day long, sir. I mean, what you read is awesome, but that's not Testman Road and 1600 Road tomorrow. You got to take into consideration in September too, during harvest, silage, there was corn trucks running today down 1600 Road that they're taking to Foster Farms. It's not just seasonal, it's daily.
You direct
So,
us.
so yeah, I'm directing to the whole crowd. I'm not seeing anybody out, but my disappointment started off the bat with this meeting to know if this is even a moot point, because what she brought up is legitimate. So, we all could be wasting all of our time right here, right now until that's investigated. So I think on that, I'll just be quiet, and I welcome my property to any of you guys that want to come out there during the day and sit and watch. It's nice, it's peaceful. I don't think what they're planning is gonna hurt anything, but you're not seeing the whole picture. And I look around this room and I can honestly say, I'm 3rd generation California Mason. There isn't anybody in here that's lived out there longer than I have. And any occupation that can be done out there, I've done. I've even driven a tractor, knocked over a sign in a mailbox. But it was in my heart to always try to go back and do that right thing and put them back up. Who's to say when they're going to move cows down those roads? You're not looking at the big picture. So that's where I'm going to stand. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Jerry Kittinger,
They left.
they left. Is there anyone else? I've run through my list. I have Cindy and Zach Rock and Brenda. Is there anyone else that wants to speak on this?
I would have one more
Everyone stand by. We lost power for the second time tonight. Again, we had a power outage at the admin building down here for the second time tonight. They're trying to get power and internet back up.
No sound.
We get to, back to this feller's point, that this is zoned to ag area, we're just, this is a small RV park, this is the Airbnb park, this is an event center, we're just like, it's getting crazy here, in my opinion, and I don't think it's fair with where we left off last time, transferring over here today, just to look over that. And
Yeah, sorry, where did we leave off last time?
that was a point that we were talking about, restricting this, only rent these during the event. And if you rent all 20 of them, whatever, it's during the event, but it's not gonna be ran as like a trailer park.
How do you define an event? The rental of 2 rooms or?
When the event is, I don't know, that's.
Right, because it could, the one
Somebody has a family
benefit-
reunion
Yeah,
right around the
that
corner, so
reunion.
that's an event for them.
Right.
I mean, how would that
One benefit that the community could receive directly is the availability for some extra family in some rooms when you got a family reunion. So you're almost taking away the one of the potential benefits that the direct community could use this thing for. Maybe they could give a discount if you live within 4 miles.
And potentially incentivizing larger events for the Crocs to advertise more larger events because they've got to fill those rooms, I'm with you, I think like the extra 10 rooms in terms of impact on the community is low, but it is potential added revenue for the county, added benefit for
I agree. I just
Yeah.
wish when we were having our powwow last time, we would have got a little further and had a resolution while everybody was sitting here.
I
On
think
that versus now.
what I remember talking about was a condition that specified that these were short-term lodging and not to be rented for long-term
That makes
lodging
sense.
or
That makes-
long-term.
And I think that's still his
purposes.
intention.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, but I think
it's still
that's-
So
short
that,
term.
that
But I think
restriction,
that restriction would fit within our conditions and then would escalate to another permit if that type of, if for whatever reason, not even that Mr. Proc would do it, but some owner in the future wanted to turn that into long-term RV
Right.
park and farm worker housing versus,
yeah, then they're coming back.
yeah.
I mean, it'd be
then they'd have to
against
come
his
back
whole
for it.
idea if he did long-term rental.
And it's-
I mean, think about it. All of a sudden he's got somebody says, hey, I have a wedding coming up. I'm sorry, I've got those already rented for a month. I mean, that would be really his
Right.
disadvantage to do it long-term.
Plus,
Right, but in the future, someone could buy that property and say, well, I've got a tiny home village, I've got a commercial kitchen, I've got a 1 communal space in a tiny home village and 3,
Would we
or,
not
10
require them to
units
come back
for
in
long.
front because now
Right.
the,
Yeah, that would
That's
be-
a
what they're
different,
doing
you
is
know,
That would be the
change.
restriction she's talking about.
There you
Short-term is a good condition. Short-term is a good condition.
There you
And,
go.
the major impacts to events, I say give the people the best chance for income and success. by
I
getting
agree.
some
I mean, I don't wanna cut them, but when we were here last time, it was at the topic that, that changed from the last time he was here to here to now with everybody. I'm just saying, I wish all those people were still sitting here so they could jump up and put their 2 cents in, but they're not here today. We changed the game from then.
And they'll have another opportunity at the next
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, they'll have an opportunity about it.
I'll take that, I guess. They'll get it,
Yeah.
they'll get their chance there.
You bet.
Is the short-term rental amenable to you?
It's not me, I don't live next to it. I mean.
Well, but it was in a motion,
But in.
maybe included a motion.
Oh, yeah,
because-
it would work. I don't think that's what's gonna happen. I think it's gonna be a short-term rental, and I think it's gonna be rented out probably about 180 days a year, probably all of them. So,
Nice.
I think we're gonna have another applicant next week, we'll do the same thing, and we're gonna have to deal with it.
Are you-
Probably another one,
Do you have anything?
notice the short-term rental thing was on.
So one of the things that came up today, and I throw it out for the planning commission, is this access realignment. That I think we condition, they talked about making that in there. I think we should condition that we do have, see some type of access realignment with that, the road coming in. The engineer wasn't even sure whose road was what when we came into this, and I think if he understood that going in, he would have said it'd be best if we realign that road. I think we should ask for some type of access realignment. I mean, do we need new traffic counts based on what Mr. Hayes and some other people are saying? I know those are old traffic counts, but they're 2 years old. That's something that I would think we discussed or was brought up here from the neighbors. Traffic was the issue. I think Mr. Proc is if he's talked to all the neighbors and feels like he can mitigate their concerns as far as the traffic that's going there, I'm okay with that. A lot of conversation, Ms. Brown, about just 30 weddings, 35 a year. Yet I don't think you'll want us to condition this on a limited, so essentially we're giving you unlimited if we don't condition it. And that sort of scares me because again, it could be 50, it could be 75, it could be 365 events. Essentially what we're saying, and that's really, I don't think what we're trying to approve here. I mean, we're sort of taking you at your word. 35, even if I hedge it by 10 or 20%, it's only, 40 to, so, but if it got into 50 or 60, 70, I feel like personally, that's twice as many. I don't feel like there's enough consensus to restrict you. But it concerns me. You said 2 to 3 a month. And that, I don't know that we're going to agree on restricting you to that. But I guess if you get that many more and the complaints come from the neighbors, and there's other issues that traffic, et cetera, you may be faced with other issues as far as fire mitigation. Clearly fire is an issue, but I think if we leave it for a fire mitigation plan, it's not, that gets approved by a fire marshal, whoever the authority is, I'm okay with that too. Other than that, all of what Jacob mentioned, that they did agree to a restriction on hours of operations to be done by midnight. I think that's something that's, we did not hear from UVWA, but we can condition it on a maintenance agreement with UVWA, and I think that'll just force that. I don't really know what we're saying regarding the signage and speed limits and special events as far as what we're going to sign. I don't know how we're going to make that motion. That was it. Access 311. I think we need to make some condition that includes that entryway for larger vehicles, the limousine with the bride and groom, and if they can't make that turn.
To that point, TK, didn't you have a condition in here, Jacob, that just was for the traffic plan or engineered traffic plan?
Yeah, we'll condition that they work with the county engineer to establish a mutually agreeable decision on traffic control.
And that can be included in that. That'd be right.
Or we could request they submit, it's pretty common to submit a traffic plan through the traffic engineer over here.
Okay.
And then he works with the.
Recognizing that Mr. Hudson was recommending that access be looked at, if that's part of it, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, those are his words.
Yep.
But yeah, he's the traffic engineer, this, he's got to agree. And
Okay.
that would address the access issue. That's they're gonna do turning radiuses and all that during the traffic light.
Okay.
I'm
done.
Yeah.
No, I think that covers most of it for me. If you were to try to limit event frequency, I think you look at it per week, like 2 per week, Friday, Saturday night, that's 104 events a year on average over the year. So you
Well,
could,
it's not gonna be in
You know,
mid-February.
right, but on average over the year,
This is a
right?
private business.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of
And
restrictions.
we're
anyway,
gonna
really.
start restricting some private business activity.
I hear you.
Not that an overuse in having it be a real nuisance to the neighborhood is not an issue, but when we get into controlling private business interests.
Well, we did at the asphalt plant, we restricted their private business.
Well, for reasons that there were commitments, right?
Because they were CDL drivers, that's why.
Okay. Do you have any conditions you'd like to see?
No, I just, as part of the traffic management plan, I would like to see signage, but I think you had that in there. And I would like, I don't know that we can require it, but I'd sure like to see it in your advertising. You would do recommended routes for people coming from Montrose or coming from Grand Junction.
What kind of balloons you want? Blue or?
I don't
Put that in there.
But getting it away from
Let's see if that was. part of the
Chessman
plan.
and getting it away from kids and bicycles the best you can in your own advertising makes a hell of a lot of sense to me. For your interest and for everybody else's interest.
Do you feel like that would be covered under the traffic control?
Well, I think it ought to be, but I mean, it's like you guys aren't flying with this stuff I bring up, even though it's eminently sensible. But it's sort of up to them. I'm not sure we can require how they advertise, but, I mean, I originally thought about specified routes and nobody was gonna go with that. Although we have done that, we did that, tried to do it on the solar site.
No impact fee today, Steve? The impact,
Pardon me?
impact fee deal, all these extra.
No, we asked them to take a look at that, and the guys said they saw it, everything, and so. It's not, unless there's signage put in, that would be an impact.
So I'd entertain a motion. If it would be one on the floor.
I'll make a motion for approval, to recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners for said subdivision, the Proc, or excuse me, not subdivision, the Proc Event Center with the following conditions, if you'll read off the record.
Condition 1, condition that rooms and RV spaces be short-term rentals, and if they are to be long-term, a separate application be submitted. Condition 2, condition that a fire mitigation plan be submitted and approved by the fire chief. Condition 3, that music and drink be done by midnight. Condition 4, that a maintenance agreement with UVWA is on file. Condition 5, that they work with the county engineer to establish a mutually agreeable decision on traffic control. And condition 6, that documentation that the building plans meet the fire code. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
A second.
Is there any discussion on said motion? Hearing none, I'll put it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
I'm gonna have to abstain from voting due to a conflict of interest, and due to our bylaws, I have to state on the record what my conflict of interest is, and that is part 3 of A 7.2. I'm gonna have to abstain from voting because this commission goes by Robert's Rules of Order, and the laws that I want to quote on the record that constitute me abstaining from voting are the Colorado State Constitution Amendment 41, A through E, Ethics in Government, State Statute 30-28-104, State Statute 18-8-404, and 18-8-405.
With that, motion passes. Mr. Brock, you'll be seeing the Board of County Commissioners sometime in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
I got a question, just for, like, on this sort of permit, does it get reviewed like every, some sort of just forever?
It's
Or is
an
it like
entitlement that
a
runs with your
review?
land, so, yeah, I mean, they are subject to, remaining in compliance with their conditions.
Gotcha.
So there's a condition compliance. But other than that, it stays on the road.
Okay, so we're moving into C on our agenda. Actually, before we do, let's take a 5-minute comfort break in these restrooms.
Thank you.
I'll come back and we'll talk. Thank you. We're gonna bring back to the table. We have on our agenda C Planning Commission bylaws. We'll take it to Carl.
Actually, I think Robbie.
We just have
more than
one
that.
sentence from the county attorney. Again, this is the memo from the county attorney. Confidential and privileged legal advice. However, one sentence can be put here. A planning commission officer who has served 2 years in a particular position is ineligible to be re-elected to that position until after 1 year has passed.
In light of the debate this evening, it would be my recommendation, Mr. Chair, that you defer this item and ask for an executive session with the county attorney to actually get legal advice from the county's legal council.
Do we need a motion for that?
I would, yeah.
I'll make a motion to do what Carl said.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, so the discussion is we'll come together with John Mayer. We've had to do this before in the past. Go to the big man, we'll ask him all his questions and.
But the way it is right now, you could serve 2 years, then just not serve a year, but you could always be reelected back to serve another 2 years, as long as you have a year gap in between, correct?
That is correct, and if the chair vacates the position for any reason, the vice chair becomes the chair, and then the planning commission elects a new vice chair.
So would that, if that did happen, would that individual just fill out the rest of that term of that person and then still have an additional 2 years? Or would it be from the time that they took over that position, it would be 2 years?
That's not clear.
Okay.
Last John.
Just sorry to
But
ask.
but I will also add, the planning commission is not obligated to have bylaws.
Okay.
So that's something that you may also want to be thinking about. If you either want to amend your bylaws.
Okay.
Obviously, one thing relative to the membership is not consistent with statute. So that would be one thing. And then if you wanted to have a different conversation about how the chair or vice chair elections work, you could have that conversation as well, provided it's consistent with statute. Or you can just not have bylaws at all.
I have a question. So from what I've read, the planning commission, okay, I'll reference Colorado State statute. Colorado State statute states that the planning commission shall adopt such rules and regulations governing its procedures as it may consider necessary or advisable, and shall keep a record of its proceedings, which shall be open to inspection by the public at all times. The Board of County Commissioners has authority to employ experts and staff and shall pay such expenses as may be deemed necessary for carrying out the powers conferred and the duties prescribed in this article. So if the planning commission shall adopt such rules and regulations governing its procedures, what are those rules and regulations?
It said as necessary, or as it deems necessary.
Yes, but it still shall adopt a set
As
of
it
rules.
deems necessary.
That's the reason for my recommendation.
So
Until
what are
the
the-
county's legal
As it
counsel
deems
is
necessary,
able to be
as
here.
we deem it necessary. That's what that said.
We're gonna ask John. We don't know it. That'll be the best thing.
Got 8 years getting that.
We have a motion in a second.
There's a motion and a second. Last thing I'll say is that if we do make any changes to our bylaws, it will be publicly notified. We will have a public hearing on it. We're not gonna go to this exec session and do it with all the bylaws. So folks in the room and online don't think that's what's gonna happen. Just know you need to square some things away apparently. Motion on the floor second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. That brings us to D, department report, Carl.
Couple items, Mr. Chair. First of all, at the last board meeting, the board asked to have an item on March 21st regarding the solar moratorium, which effectively expired March 6th. It was initially established for 6 months or until land use code was adopted with standards, which had not happened. And so there will be an item on the March 21st agenda for the board to consider extending that moratorium for 6 months. Also, they've given direction for me to put out an RFQ for surveying services, primarily for subdivision reviews. So we'll be doing that. And then also finally, the land use code, there is a work session tomorrow at 1 p.m. with the Board of County Commissioners. And they'll be reviewing a red line of the 2021 land use code, per their direction on March 1st at the work session following the public hearing.
Not March 1st, April.
No, March 1st.
It was from March 1st.
From
that's why
March
it has
1st.
to-
I'm sorry. I thought you said you were in public hearing. Work session.
So once the board completes their review of the red line, whatever they want to add, delete, modify, it will be referred to your planning commission, and you'll have up to 30 days to report back to the Board of County Commissioners, and then they will have a public hearing and take action.
So at this point, all public hearing on land use code will be at the Board of County Commissioners.
That is correct. That concludes my report.
Thank you.
Marcia,
What are we intended to do then if we don't? we're not having-
well, they're gonna send us a red line.
And what are we doing?
Give them our
The
comments.
same, I mean, the way the statute is written is you accept, reject, or suggest modifications, then the board will take that under consideration at a public hearing.
And we have 30 days to do that by the time we receive it, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Or I suppose no comment.
Could be.
But that would be an accept.
Are there any other commissioner comments, requests, referrals?
I have a question. Where's Lane?
Lane had cataract surgery and today
Is he still part of the same?
he's an associate.
He's
Okay.
He's an associate member and Victoria is the sitting member. Lane would have voted tonight. So the
I must have missed all that.
How was Japan?
That's outside this meeting.
We're adjourned.
Now you can ask her.
Now you can do a slideshow.